Hi everyone, welcome to New in Data Tech with Julia, where we get behind the scenes on the newest technology and do a total geek out on the newest features and how they apply to all the problems that I have seen and that people see in this industry. And I'm very happy to welcome Manish Sood, who is the CEO and founder of Reltio, and Matt Kehoe, who is the managing director of financial services in Reltio. So Reltio does master data management, and as I'm sure as many of my listeners know, and master data management is one of the most important disciplines. In fact, when people ask me about data management, the first thing I talk about usually is master data management, because frankly, without that, you can't really do very much. But it's also one of the most complex ones. And there is the technical complexity, which are significant, and there are also change management complexities that are significant. And especially in the financial services, this is such a key discipline because for regulatory, we all had to do it for KYC, we had for AML, for financial reporting. How do you do financial reporting for multinational corporations without resolving your legal entities? So master data management is front and center, but again, it remains a challenge. So for people who are not as familiar, can you give us a high level quick overview of what does Reltio do and what, Manish, and why did you start it? What brought this on?
Julia, that's a great question. And, in 2011 is when I started Reltio. Past experience that I had was in the area of master data management. I had worked on previous generation products and capabilities. But by the 2011 timeframe, it was becoming very clear to me that when you talk about legal entities, when you think about financial services, client data, legal entity type of information, securities type of information, these are all the critical assets that these businesses run on. But at the same time, they're fragmented, they're siloed. One of the large financial institutions I was talking to said they have not just 5 or 6 different systems, they have 15,000 different applications that they're using. Imagine the complexity of how big the problem was going to be. And I'm talking about 2011. Now we are in 2025. This problem has become a bigger problem. It's not just about looking at specific entities and very limited attribution. Now it's become a bigger problem where, when you think about it in the context of AI, you have to have deeper understanding of what's taking place with a legal entity across multiple lines of business, across multiple touch points, across multiple engagement patterns. And that's where this notion of MDM is now becoming more of the larger concept of data unification at large. That's the opportunity that we saw back in 2011, and that's why I started Reltio.
Yeah, I used to say that after the financial crisis, the whole data management, data governance programs started with the question, what's your exposure to Lehman Brothers? And the problem wasn't the exposure. Problem was, what do you mean by Lehman Brothers? And that's a
Yes.
master data management problem. Before we get into the depths, Matt, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, absolutely. And really building on what Manish was discussing there. We talk about all these different applications in the silo issue, but it's really even across divisions. I speak with many different banks, and even we take the KYC regulatory stuff. Well, what they're doing in, say, retail banking, what they're doing in private banking, what they're doing in wealth management, sometimes are very different. So it's not even a function of getting across the applications, but it's really getting across all the divisions.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go in a little bit more detail. I have done master data management a few times in my career. And one of the complexities doing match and merge, and match and merge is a term of art in master data management, but what it means is very simply, are those two entities the same or are they different? And if you have two entities coming from two different systems, two different business lines, and you compare them to each other, and if they're the same, you merge them, and if they're not the same, you split them apart. It sounds very simple, right? It's not at all. Because how do you define how many rules you create? It's always some kind of a problem. If you have too many rules, you have too many exceptions, and that's a challenge all of its own. If you have too few rules, you merge people that or companies you should merge. And you have nightmare scenarios. You merge two John Smiths, And all of a sudden, one John Smith gets confidential information about another John Smith. So this is a very complex one. I always felt that machine learning can really help with that. Not a lot of vendors have done it at the time when last time I was looking at it. But now with flexible entity resolution network, Fern, can you tell me more? So I've read about it and it sounds really cool. Can you tell me what it does?
So, with the several decades of experience that we have had in the space, similar to the problems that you encountered, we ourselves, as creators of different generation of product capabilities, ran into the same set of problems. And every time it was not possible to just keep adding rules because it's one way of doing it. But think about the precision. The example that you used is a perfect one where the cost and the implications of bringing two records together where they should not have been combined, there are real financial implications, privacy and financial implications. And we wanted to make sure that as we develop the capabilities, we would also hone in on the precision. And what we found, Julia, was that rules are a good starting point, but at the same time, they need to be complemented with other technologies and capabilities. And machine learning was one step in this direction, but now think about some of the capabilities that have been brought to life in terms of basic building blocks from large language models. And I'm not saying large language models is the magic sauce, but it is a great building block. If you had cross language matching to do, we can built-in transliteration capabilities and vector-based approaches where we can look at strings and compare them across different domains. And why is precision so important in this journey? You talked about financial institution. Think about different verticals have different tolerances. If I was just doing marketing from different furniture manufacturers, sometimes you get two catalogs. What is the consequence or the cost? Yes, there is a cost for the company, but for you as a consumer, you look at those two catalogs, you question why I received them, and you toss one of them in the garbage bin, and you move on. The implication is very different from if you're a healthcare or a financial institution. Do you want to apply the wrong treatment to the wrong patient, or do you want to have funds combined from two different people or organizations into a single account? No, you don't want that happening. And that's where the precision becomes an important part of the journey. And that's where we looked at how do we use different techniques to further revalidate and confirm the precision around these records, and sometimes also look at the signals to unmerge or pull apart different entities in an automated fashion.
So deploying this in the financial services, you have to train the model. So what does deployment looks like?
So one of the other things that we wanted to do with the technology that we were building, we wanted to reduce the time to value. And we wanted to make sure that the customers don't have to go through excessive amounts of training cycles in order to get to this precise outcome. So our goal was to develop Fern as a zero-shot model that we could bring to the customers that are trained already on specific data domains.
This is a really important point. So what you have done, if I understand correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you have trained this model on industry-specific entities, and to deploy it, I don't have to do any training of my own or supply any of my sensitive data.
Absolutely, Julia, absolutely. So our goal is to look at it domain by data domain for specific industries and come prepared to the table with a zero-shot model approach where you can deploy that model.
Okay. So Matt, do you have examples? So how did it work in the client space?
Yes, it's been a game changer for us. First and foremost, talking about the time to value. So that's tremendous, because if you look, a lot of the mindset that they've had is we have to train this model and what's that going to take? And when we can actually demonstrate what we bring to the table, and that checks one major box right there. But then also we always come down to what Manish had led with here, with the risk mitigation side of it. the concern, especially in financial services. And we look at really three key things: security, privacy, and explainability. And so we've been able to very much tackle those pillars as well.
In terms of the challenges of deploying it, is there something that you feel that there is a level of maturity or readiness in the organization for them successfully to deploy this? Is there some preconditions or prerequisite that you feel if a company has that in place, it makes it for a much more successful deployment?
So Julia, another great question in terms of the time to value. And a lot of times as we are engaging with the customers, we are sharing with them what do they have to do from a state of readiness perspective, because a lot of times, especially in large financial institutions, what we find is when we are trying to go attempt these kinds of projects, technology is not the biggest barrier. Technology can solve the problem, but how are different teams going to work with each other? How are they going to provide access to information from across lines of business? Because there are different owners, different stakeholders that need to be involved. If you don't have access to the information, guess what? Our project can't even get off the ground.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, Manish, I could take that a step further, really, where we get a little bit more specific in the industry. I speak a lot with banks and insurance companies, large insurance companies. And really, to your point there, a lot of these insurance companies that I'm working with, they've been really early adopters comparatively to the banks in regards to their cloud adoption, in regards to their data transformation. So they're already in a very good place, a good inflection point to move to an AI transformation. Whereas I find that a lot of the banks, they're not ready yet. To Manish's point there, there's just so much disparity in the data, still very siloed, still haven't taken down that true data transformation, which is key to moving forward.
Yeah. And very difficult to do. So, and this actually, what you've put in place helps a lot, because that's one of from the technology perspective, that's one of the most difficult things to implement. But let's move on, because there is a technology piece, and then there is a piece that a lot of companies and a lot of data leaders, including myself, till I came across it and it smacked me in the face, frankly, I completely underestimated the importance of it, which is, as you said, in the process of match and merge, you get exceptions. So you did your best, and then you have two records, and you just don't have enough confidence to say either way, is it the same or is it different? And it could be a lot of those. And what happens is that you need to establish business data stewardship, and you have business people that have to go into the system and look at the exception of the exception and do research and figure out same or different. That's very detailed work. For a lot of business people, that's really, most of the time, not their job. And it's hard to get people to do it effectively over the period of time. So the other thing that, as I was doing research for this conversation, you have developed agent flow. So this is AI agents. And it's a very good use of AI agent, which is help business people to deal with this whole line of exceptions much more effectively. So can you tell me more about it? What does it actually do?
So Julia, the problem that we are trying to address is one of the amount of manual labor that has to go into some of the data governance and the data stewardship work. First of all, you made a very good point. Every team out there is trying to do data stewardship and data governance in their spare time. When you think about a typical data stewardship flow, an exception has been outlined by the system. Now somebody needs to manually go review it. And just looking at those two records or multiple records is not enough. You have to go do additional research on each and every record. The reason why these were outlined as exceptions, because there wasn't enough information for the system to make a decision. So now what we are doing is the amount of time that you spend on doing the research, collating additional details, that's a lot of human effort that goes into it. So can we roll out agents that are in fact taking on some of that burden of doing the research, laying it out in a visual manner for you, adjacent to the records that you are looking at, so that you can then go ahead and try and compare those. And even the comparison of those additional details, can it be done in a systematic agentic manner? So going from research agent to comparison agents to then resolving those differences and making sure that we can take the process further. And think about the impact in a data steward's work or day in life of a data steward. One of our customers was using 300 data stewards. We are now trying to bring that number down and increase productivity where 3 global data stewards can handle that kind of workload. So a
That's,
dramatic
yeah,
transformation,
that's huge.
but a lot of research, a lot of the comparisons, a lot of the augmentation that needs to happen in the process, all of that is being condensed into an agentic workflow. And the benefit of this agentic workflow is that it doesn't work from 8 to 5, it works nonstop, continuously, and it works on multiple threads and multiple processes simultaneously.
It is revolutionary. Though I do have a question. So, since financial services we've talked about, as opposed to sending multiple catalogs, you have a lot more at stake, especially when you go to regulatory privacy and AML type of situations. So, what kind of governance auditability do you have over those agents to make sure that the decisions, if there is automated decisioning, versus just automated bringing in information, if you go as far as automated decisioning, that this decisioning is being done correctly.
Yeah. And especially in the regulated industries like financial services, the approach that we are taking is that we have to reduce the amount of manual work that takes place, but that doesn't mean that we take the human out of the loop.
Okay.
We are still making sure that the process is outlined in a manner where the human can now review more cases in a shorter time frame with all the information lined up, with all the decision tree type of outcomes laid out for them to easily review and say, yes, we can move forward.
Manish is spot on with that. Is one of the key things, and we've all been doing data management for years, is how we can actually get to what a high value agent use case is in this particular case. And so the operational agents, as I'll call them there, or as we're reducing, not eliminating, reducing manual handoff, is really very strong use cases that we're getting good adoption around in the financial services. They're so risk adverse. This gives us a way to really address their risk while also providing a high value use case.
The big thing for financial services companies, figuring out where to use this very new technology where operational risk is contained, I think, and there is a high value. I think that's really important. So let's move on to the next use case, which is a little bit different because it goes beyond MDM, meaning you already matched your records and you have your clean record. But then is how marketing and sales. Institutions segment and send marketing emails or try to reach out just based on a very narrow set of parameters. And actually, as a consumer, I see it quite a bit. And it's one of my favorite examples is I'm a customer of a bank and I just opened a credit card. And a week later, I get an email offering me the same credit card only with a better deal. Which means, what did they do? They matched on some of my parameters that I'm a customer, right? And whatever else, but they didn't match on very important one. What's the recent transaction? The recent transaction that I opened the credit card. That did not go into this. So I think this is something new that you've just added, which is dynamic segmentation based on this rich customer information that was created through what we've talked, adding behavior. This is the work of marketing and sales team to significantly enlarge the parameters on which they create segmentation, basically creating a segment of one, cohort of one.
Yes, absolutely. And this is all about creating that segment of one because the industry is more and more moving towards that one-on-one personalization type of a construct. And this is where understanding behavioral information is extremely critical. So not just that you limit yourself to segmentation based on some of the demographic type of information or firmographic type of information, but also bringing behavioral attribution into the mix is extremely important. And important not just from a sales and marketing perspective, but also think about it from a client engagement standpoint, the experience that you're trying to deliver, or think about financial crimes as a particular area where you're trying to understand some of the behavioral attribution in order to drive the conclusion that is this a specific KYC, AML, or financial crimes type of a scenario or not. So how do we bring that together and make sure that all the business processes are looking at the same information to make the decisions? And this is where sales, marketing, client experience, financial crimes, all of these aspects need to operate against that same data set. So that's why we created the capability to also be able to bring behavioral attribution in the multi-channel type of interactions or engagement activities that are taking place, and then make sure that that is available for decisioning. Now, we are not trying to replace data lake or a data warehouse. What we do is, as we stitch this information together, we also pipe this information in a streaming manner into those data lake houses or data warehouses, so that for the long-term resident memory or long-term analytical patterns, you can go against that data. But for any kind of real-time decisioning, we become the conduit for making that information available. And that's where the segmentation or the dynamic segmentation becomes important.
Very good point, Manish, because this is one of the things that I was always struggling with a lot of vendors. I always wanted to get data back into my environment. So have your platform perform whatever actions or reports, dashboards, or what have you in the platform, but give me my data back. And I'm so glad to hear that you're not trying to replace in-house systems or cloud in-house systems. So let me ask you a question. Though I love this capability, having said that, being a large corporation, I see how this could be change management challenge, because you're changing how people do work and what the results do they see. How do you see people addressing that? Have you seen that as you deploy these types of capabilities?
What we recommend to our customers is to take a step-by-step approach, because this is a big change management, and the process of doing work is going to be transformed with this kind of capability, where instead of building application first architectures, now you're really moving to data first architectures and informing these capabilities with the right data, the trusted data to work with. Every customer will always have an increasing number of systems, increasing number of sources, increasing number of data domains that they want to tackle. I haven't met a customer who has raised their hand and said we have less data to manage, and that will never happen. So how do you build the system of capability where you can continue to grow and expand over a period of time? We are able to go into an environment, start with something that is very small, and then grow from there to an enterprise-wide cross-line of business type of an orientation. And that gives the enterprise the flexibility to slowly work on the change management in parallel as well. So that's been the benefit of creating it in the right manner with the right kind of flexible foundation.
And Manish, two very large companies that I've worked with that have replaced legacy MDM with Reltio. And we're having these discussions with them, and it's changing their mindset. Again, the change management, because one of the concerns they had is coming off of legacy MDM, they had bloated MDM. They had viewed it as too much had been pushed into MDM. It was no longer MDM. So it's really how we've been able to redefine the whole data unification paradigm there.
Sometimes you either don't have MDM or everything is an MDM. And it's an operational system, and it's a business intelligence system, and it's a data warehouse. Yeah, it's kind of everything's in there. So let me just, if I walk through, if I am looking to establish MDM capability, and match and merge is a serious problem. I have multiple systems, multiple definitions, even multiple languages. Firm capability. is the one that I want to look at, try it out, given that it's 0-day model. Just see what it does and deploy it. The other piece to not forget, which is again, a lot of data professionals, and when I teach, I see it all the time, completely forget business stewardship. So we do match and merge and it's working, and somebody will resolve exceptions and magically will happen. And unfortunately, that magic never works. So looking at agent flow and seeing how that can streamline and help business people to do this. But what's very important, I think the last one is how do you deploy it for business value? Because everything we talked about, match and merge, technical consideration. Business stewardship is data governance. It's not yet directly tied to the value, but the third one, which is dynamic segmentation, it's directly to business value. So actually it's the other way around. You start with the business value, you define what do you need for segmentation. Then you go and see which entities are minimal that you want to bring into your platform, and then start deploying from there. Is that the right way to think about of bringing Reltio into your mix of technologies?
Absolutely. And this is where, instead of taking the boil the ocean approach where I can do anything and everything, we recommend the customers start with what are the business use cases that you want to tackle first. Because mapping out a progression where we are able to deliver value to you as the customer in a 30, 60, 90-day progression, every 30 days, there has to be a business value milestone that we are meeting. Because today, these institutions don't even know what is their penetration rate with the same customer across multiple lines of business.
Yeah, across multiple products. Absolutely. It's an important question to be able to answer. And unfortunately, very few companies actually can. So we've talked quite a bit about what I call AI for data, meaning using AI, machine learning, and Gen AI to move forward how you manage your data and how you make it useful. Obviously, there is a big part on the other side. If you have business initiatives that rely on AI as a capability that's needed to deliver value, you also need to have data capabilities. So, Matt, I think you're teaching a data-driven masterclass in the financial services in New York on September 30th, right, on Times Square at NASDAQ market site. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, Julia, I will not be leading the session there. I will be there, absolutely. But it's really a great half-day type of session we set up there, beginning at 1:30 in the afternoon. It's on September 30th. We have Ben Tramaman. He is really considered a global leader, global thought leader in digital transformation. He's actually leading what we'll say is the financial services masterclass part of it. We're going to be doing interactive peer-to-peer workshops. And because that's really how a lot of people are learning further, is understanding what's happening in other organizations. We're going to have a fireside chat with MasterCard, and they'll be able to really share some great insights from that end. It's really a deep dive into a lot of good information there. It's not fluff.
Well, I'm actually going to be away on that date. Otherwise, I would have asked you for the invite because it sounds like a really good session. So let's close our conversation and look a little bit into 2026. So there have been a lot of changes in 2025, especially in development and using both AI for data and data of AI. What do you think from the financial services perspective? What should people think about? How should they plan? What should they look forward to and what to consider?
Julia, in 2026, you will see a further acceleration of AI capabilities. You will see more innovation coming to the table, and not just from vendors like Reltio, but also from the entire ecosystem. But one of the biggest friction points that every institution will have to think about is the siloed data friction point, the quality of data friction point. In order for you to leverage AI capabilities, get business value, benefit from it, you will have to address your data debt. It's not just a technology debt anymore. It's the data debt that has to be addressed across the entire organization. Everybody will want faster outcomes with AI. But if we are going to increase the clock speed of the business and operate at a faster pace, then we have to make sure that we have the right information available as a trusted asset to inform these AI decisions and AI models with.
Thank you, Manish. I couldn't agree more, of course, but I've spent my career and my 30 years of my life of figuring out how to do just that. And with AI, we have a lot more capability to accelerate the process of getting data ready.
And that is why data in this age of AI is now out of the basement into a boardroom conversation.
Absolutely true. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for coming to New in Data Tech with Julia. And I've enjoyed our conversation and I've learned a lot. So thank you and best of luck with the masterclass. Again, I wish I could go there. And
Thank you.
we'll talk later.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Julia.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.